afternoon, and welcome to the Federal Executive Forum celebrating 20 years of profiling excellence in government IT mission programs. I'm Luke McCormack. During today's show, we will discuss critical issues facing government and industry leaders in rolling out zero trust strategies and technologies. With me on today's show are Jennifer Gase, Deputy Chief Information Security Officer, Central Intelligence Agency; Chris Pym, DISA Zero Trust Portfolio Manager, Thunderdome ID7 Division Chief; Barry Tanner, Deputy Chief Information Officer, Department of Navy; Gary Barlett, Public Sector Chief Technology Officer and Principal Solutions Architect at Illumio; Rob Sheldon, Senior Director, Public Policy and Strategy at CrowdStrike; and Christopher Yates, Chief Architect and Army Joint Agencies, Red Hat. All right, we are talking about A to Z Zero Trust, and we are all on a journey here. Jennifer, we're going to start with you. We know that there's a focus to, there was a 24 focus, there's a 27 focus, and we know this is a journey, right? This architecture isn't something that is stagnant, it evolves over time. Give us a top line state of the state of how things are going over there at the agency.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I think as far as zero trust goes, I look at a lot of the technical journeys that we've taken as an organization, cloud, better partnering and leveraging managed services and things we're doing with industry. And I want to say zero trust was probably one of the easiest ones to get buy-in for, right? Like we're the CIA. Trust no one, trust no devices, verify everything. It was pretty well in
Absolutely.
line
I
with
guess
how
we
we do
learned it from
business.
you, right?
Yeah, right. So it was pretty straightforward. So I think that was one of the things we actually did really, really well with zero trust from the onset. I think we had good buy-in. We had a solid budget proposal. We worked really hard to make sure we established a lead for that entire initiative that spans both the cybersecurity domains and our technical domains, and we launched into it. I think one of our biggest successes was looking at what we do for our unclassed collaboration environment. We were able to do something kind of from the ground up in that space, leveraging cloud native services and really configure that to have zero trust principles baked in from the beginning. Now we're continuing that journey to look at more and more of our existing systems and how we really integrate those into a zero trust architecture and continue to eat away at capabilities and modernization that'll help move the needle on that journey.
Yeah, you really have to chop away at this technical debt and implement these capabilities across the board. Not easy to do, I'm sure, in a global environment there. Chris, speaking of not easy to do, what a badass name for a program, Thunderdome. Tell us about how DISA is implementing this capability, no doubt worldwide.
Good afternoon. So yeah, good name. What it really means is DISA's implementation of zero trust, right? So that's what Thunderdome is. It's a sexy name for an implementation of zero trust, which zero trust is an architecture, right? So DISA began this journey about 4 years ago. So we're pretty far down the path, but certainly not finished. And as you said earlier, it's always an evolution that we have to move towards. So we have begun with the network layer and the device and endpoints and started walking through that. As you mentioned, leading up to the question, DISA's terrain is vast. It's pretty much the entire Department of Defense information network. So that's really a large apple to take a bite of. So we started with the network and the zero trust network aspects and the device and the user and understanding from an identity standpoint, which is a key component of zero trust, how to do that. We will finish DISA's terrain, be done with DISA's terrain next month. That's about 80 or so sites. And every time we move to a new DoD net, they're calling it, but really it's the DoDN. Any defense agency and field activity that moves to DISA will have Thunderdome included. So it's like Intel included, right? That we know from a few years back as you looked at your laptop, right? So as we migrate every single defense agency and field activity, we include Thunderdome, which gets them the zero trust effects that we are looking for. And in DoD, at least, they're looking for target activities of 91 for target and then 152 advanced. And in the last couple of weeks, DISA was assessed at 152 of 152 advanced activities by a purple team. to prove out the solution that we put on the ground. So we're pretty proud of that, and we're pretty proud of the fact that we're 80 sites into a long journey as we migrate the network and users and endpoints to DoDNet.
A monster task, but it seems like you all are really getting after that aggressively. So I really do appreciate getting that update. I'm sure the community does as well. That you know, there's a target one can aspire to. Barry, how about over at the Navy? I'm sure you all are on a full march there to ensure that you get this capability across all your platforms, ships, aircraft, data centers, etc.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback a little bit on what Jen and Chris were talking about. Jen mentioned starting from a clean slate. You know, we were looking at zero trust even before the pandemic as a concept and an architecture, and saying, okay, well, we really need to be able to do this, but do the tools that are available actually support the kind of architecture that we need for that? And we started to find ones that worked, and all of a sudden, in a very short time frame, we were like, oh shoot, we need them now. So we actually implemented our first zero trust platform back in the around 2020 timeframe, right before everybody locked down, and we were able to leverage what we learned in that space to rapidly establish our first zero trust platform on the unclass collaboration side, very similar to what Jen was talking about. Essentially greenfield from the ground up. I'll mention some more of those lessons learned later. But to Chris's point, we've evolved over the last 4 to 5 years, and now it's more about sort of continuously assessing our progress. We started at the beginning by using red and purple team assessments to determine whether or not what we put in place actually worked. And using those results and sharing them with the rest of the Department of Defense, I think we've lifted the entire team up to that level. We did our assessment similar to what he just mentioned last summer, and had our full advanced certification of that. I think it was last July in our Unclass Collab platform, and we're starting to then move that into extend that out more into the tactical range. The big challenge, of course, we face is that communications afloat in that sort of degraded and latent environment is really difficult. And because these tools are cloud-based, you're challenged to get the same kind of effects when you're not continually connected to that state. So we've actually worked around that with some newer technologies. We're experimenting on unmanned vehicles. We're experimenting on large afloat platforms, aircraft carriers, etc. And we're seeing really good results using some of these techniques, but in such a way that you don't have to be connected all the time. So we're really excited about the progress we're seeing in those environments, because we need those kind of protections in the afloat and tactical environment, just like we need it back in the office. And actually, we probably need it more. So we're partnering very closely with the operational community to drive that. And the last thing I'll say is that this journey hasn't just been like a CIO thing. I came from the operational community, and that's really where this started from. Our operators need these tools and these capabilities, and they're the ones driving the train. So we're pretty much in support of those that run the gear and making sure that they have the tools necessary to secure, operate, and defend the environment.
I love that, non-connected configuration that you're describing there, and I'm sure there's a lot of other agencies that could take advantage of that. And yeah, cheer to the operators, right, for being able to leverage them and make this simple, so that it isn't open heart surgery when they want to implement it. Well, we did talk about, and several people have raised the fact that this is an architecture, and that's a good slide into Gary at Illumio. There's a whole bunch of capability that you all put in place here that's part of this architecture, and a very important part that, quite frankly, often gets overlooked. Tell us about Illumio, what you all do, and then what you all are doing as far as implementing this capability across the agencies.
Thanks, Luke. Appreciate it. Yeah, so here at Illumio, we're focused on what happens after an attack is successful. And we're starting to see a lot of agencies starting to ask themselves that very same question about not how do I keep trying to prevent the attack, but what happens when the attack is successful. Here at Illumio, we're about containing breaches, making sure that initial breach doesn't turn into a cyber disaster. And we're really starting to see an uptake in my conversations with agency leads. DoD is honestly leading the way in this arena. really looking at, how do they continue operations after a breach or in the middle of a breach, right? You can't just shut everything off, if you're in the middle of a military operation. That doesn't work. It might, in theory, work for a business who could say, hey, we'll lose some money, but we'll take the risk. The military can't do that. So they've kind of been leading the way in this whole, how do you look at, while you're continuing to focus on preventing those breaches, acknowledging the fact that breaches are inevitable, they're going to happen. So how do you limit the impact of those breaches? So we have really seen a refocused effort on trying to answer that question from agency heads and CISOs.
Yeah, yeah. I often use the analogy of a row house fire, right? We only want if be one townhouse to burn down, not the entire row. And I think you all have some fantastic technology that prevents that. Rob, how about at CrowdStrike? You all are right in the middle of it, trying to prevent it, also addressing issues once there is an attack. Give us a top line as to how CrowdStrike is implementing these capabilities across these various departments and agencies.
Thanks so much, Luke. Appreciate it. So it's been really interesting to watch over the past few years as both federal agencies have moved more toward a zero trust posture, and then the DoD organizations as well. So on the federal civilian side, there's been enormous uptake of our endpoint protection platform, which comports really nicely with the federal zero trust reference architecture and strategy that exists now. And then on the DoD side, it's been great to partner with a number of other vendors to provide real zero trust pilots in production that are, again, multi-vendor, cross-platform, and are really driving results for these organizations that are experimenting with our technology. So it's been great to see all that adoption. Of course, there's a lot more that needs to be done. People need to work on threat hunting across these zero trust environments, and really making sure that they're able to respond quickly if an issue does arise. And that's something that we look forward to continue to partner with agencies on.
Absolutely, and we really appreciate all the capability that you all lend to these various entities and trying to fight the good fight. Chris, how about at Red Hat? I think about Red Hat and I think about, containers, of course, and then I think about open source, and then I think, yeah, this makes sense because all of these technologies that you all have introduced are all part of this zero trust architecture. And tell us about how you all are implementing that capability across these agencies.
Yeah, thank you for that, Luke. You really hit on a key component there when you talk about containers, and we think about how the traditional doctrine for force engagement has been about static. And when we think about architectures, we think about buildings, we think about static capabilities. And containers bring this dynamic ability to respond to demand within the environment. So as our need to provide a capability increases, we need to be able to scale that capability up. And as we look at the changing threat that we face with the multi-domain operations, or needing to coordinate and integrate data across land, air, sea, space, and cyber domains, that we need to be able to also dynamically allocate the resources to provide the capabilities that we need in these changing environments. And so containers really provide that capability to flex where we're able to provide infrastructure, because it isn't static. It needs to be dynamic.
Absolutely. And we, again, architecture sort of implies static, but we know, of course, that's not, in fact, the case. All right, we're going to roll over to, well, let's go to Chris. Chris, we want to talk about a specific program. You've got a lot of different things going on over there that you've top line. Give us an example of a specific program that you'd like to highlight for the audience.
Absolutely. So really what Thunderdome is a combination of multiple programs, right? So I think to focus on just one, kind of shortens the scope of the complexity of the problem from my perspective. But identity is a big piece of it, right? But the key thing with DISA is we had identity before we started this effort. We had a program called the ICAM that we were utilizing. So the largest lift with Thunderdome as we move through this is zero trust network architecture and integrating those capabilities into what we currently have. So we had solutions, and there are many solutions on the endpoint. You heard from the gentleman from CrowdStrike earlier, right? That's largely an enterprise, an endpoint solution. We did SOC ops, or what we call CSSP ops, so Security Operations Center operations. So we had visualizations and seams that we were looking through, but the key was integrating the technology and the sensors we were putting on the network and on the devices into that overarching infrastructure. So when we built the plan for Thunderdome, we built it from the perspective of where we have gaps in our existing architecture. So we're not starting from scratch at DISA. I don't believe that anybody in the Department of Defense is starting from scratch. So really it's retrofitting these capabilities or integrating these capabilities into a cohesive solution, which is really what Thunderdome is. So the focus for the one thing that you asked for, Luke, from my perspective, is zero trust network architecture. And that's literally putting points of presence or putting policy enforcement points closest to the user and closest to the data to make sure the right people are accessing the data, and they're accessing it from a device that we approve and does not have risk as it accesses the network. So that's where we started, and that's the heavy lift for Thunderdome, the integration piece and the network piece that leverages the user identity and leverages the device information.
Yeah, really staying true to that architecture, snapping these things together where it makes sense, and cleaning up some technical debt along the way, no doubt. So great strategy, and we really do appreciate it. All right, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about zero trust architectures, and we're talking specifically now about very specific programs. Rob, let's go over to you at CrowdStrike. You have an opportunity to be sitting in a catbird seat there. You're striped across various agencies. Give us an example of a program that you'd like to highlight as very successful in regards to rolling this capability out.
Thanks, Luke. Let me mention a few things that are common aspects of programs that we see that are successful over time. So the first thing is just really treating identity as the center of zero trust implementations. And from our perspective, identity threat detection and response is a really central aspect of identity, because, as was mentioned earlier, there's other ways that people might think about identity in the space, whether that's SSO or ICAM or other identity related capabilities. But really, the threat detection and response piece for identity is very, very important. That is making sure that we're really looking at this issue comprehensively and as a vector that adversaries increasingly use to breach enterprises. Some of the other things that are important are having a real genuine cross-platform. So that's on premise, that's in cloud capability, because a lot of the environments that we need to protect do have those cross-domain aspects. And indeed, there's a lot of legacy infrastructure in place here. And if you're going to have a genuinely successful zero trust program, you need to look after those environments as well. And then I mentioned this briefly earlier, but really integrating threat hunting into your zero trust posture. So the best pilots that we see and the best actual zero trust implementations that we see in production have a threat hunting capability. And agencies get there through different methods. Some just have tools that promote that sort of capability. Others are more integrating a next gen SIEM type capability, so that even from devices they have that don't have the exact capability of just a standard endpoint or something like that, they're still able to get logs from and data from, and to be able to continue hunting in those environments, and making sure that the actual intent of the zero trust implementation is in fact working, and that the defenders are able to keep threat actors out of those environments. So those are some of the core capabilities.
Appreciate those top lines, and keep fighting the good fight there across these various government agencies. Jen, how about at CIA? I know there's a lot you can't talk about, but perhaps there's something that you can top line for us, an example of something that you all are doing over that's working very well.
Yeah, it's so funny. So I'd love to go into the things our threat hunting team is doing, because I think it's fantastic and they're incredibly
We'd love for you
brilliant,
to do that too.
Instead, however, I'm going to throw back a little bit. It's funny. I actually have a t-shirt from probably 2013 at some IT conference with a little dinosaur holding the word passwords, just as a demonstration of how long ago we in the tech community all knew that passwords were probably one of the least effective things that we could be doing to secure systems. And then here, 10 years later, you're coming back into a lot of government spaces, and that's still where you are. And we're well aware that that's the number one thing that adversaries are out there grabbing is creds from folks to get in. And so, really simple, straightforward. I want to talk about what we did in our organization to move away from that and to really deploy MFA at scale. It was a pretty big lift for us. It's something we had obviously in pockets over time, but we one of the quickest things I've seen us do as an organization, at the time I wasn't on the cybersecurity side, I was on the IT side, and we had the imperative and rolled out enterprise-wide multi-factor authentication so quickly and efficiently. It was really, really wonderful to see. I think it's probably one of the biggest steps. I like to highlight that more than some of the technical stuff, because I know not everyone at home might have folks doing ethical hacking and hunting activities on their home network, but MFA is just something that us as users, to protect our home stuff, us as government organizations and other organizations, it's just one of the best front lines of defense, and fairly simple. I mean, obviously at an enterprise scale, that was a big investment and a big muscle movement for us as an organization to really make sure we had everybody, and to the extent we can, things MFA enabled, but it's just a good practice even at home. So it's one I like to highlight for folks. It's just a great line of defense. It was probably one of our most rapid and successful quick deployments when we talk about what we're doing in the zero trust space. Obviously a little bit dated, but I just think so important.
Very important, extremely powerful once you implement it. Not much of a headache from a user experience, probably very difficult to implement on the back end and make that smooth, but clutch. And I think as we use that in our everyday lives, you can only expect to be using it inside the work environment as well. Chris, how about over at Red Hat? You all are once again an agency that is striped across all of these capabilities, all these various agencies. And give us an example of a program that you'd like to highlight that you've been able to bolster up the zero trust architecture.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to think about when I think about zero trust is that while we consider it an architecture, there is no single implementation of zero trust that is going to be the answer for every implementation. And that is just due to the heterogeneous nature of the environments that our customers operate in. That you will have various different vendors. Here on this call, you have 3 vendors, but in any of your environments that you're operating in, you're going to have dozens of different vendors, and they're all going to have different capabilities. And so what you're going to need to be able to effectively implement your zero trust strategy is interoperability and integration across all of those vendors and capabilities. And that's where Red Hat sits with our Ansible automation platform. It provides you with a way to control and manage different components outside of just the Red Hat ecosystem. So anything that you can do on the command line, you can automate through that. If you've already got automation with bash scripts or other automation tools, you can integrate those and work them into a workflow to create a holistic solution that works with what you have already. And we've implemented this again across multiple DoD environments.
Excellent, and we really do appreciate that capability. Barry, you touched on some very interesting dynamics there with your afloat platforms, et cetera. You want to highlight one of those?
We're making some good progress there, but the real success story for us, I mentioned it earlier, is the unclassed collaboration platform, which is where we kind of started this journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's been out there in the press a few times. We called it Flank Speed. I will say it was a name we thought was not going to stick around for a long time, but unfortunately, sometimes they do stick. The idea behind a flank bell,
and they'd never get rid of them.
Yeah, the idea behind a flank bell is that it's unsustainable, right? And we were really moving fast, and we figured, okay, well, at a certain point, we'll slow down. Well, we haven't, and the reason is it's been so powerful. We started from a central platform, went really fast, but now we're starting to pull in data from across the entire environment. Chris mentioned integration. A number of folks have talked about the importance of integration of that data. What it really comes down to is that we stopped being network centric, and now everything is about the data itself and protecting that data. This platform we've got in place now allows us, it's based on that central Flank Speed architecture, but It's getting telemetry from all sorts of sources, not just Office products, not just from laptops and desktops and things like that. We're pulling in telemetry from pretty much anything out there on the Unclass network, over 500,000 users globally. And we are now actually starting to pull in some of that afloat data into that same platform. And it gives our operators the scale and the power to make true zero trust level access decisions based on the identity, based on location, based on timing, based on where what network the information is coming from and where it's going to. Literally granular level decisions that are, they make us more secure. But one of the most powerful effects here has been we're actually able to collapse networks that have been around, because in the past it was, well, I need my own separate network to defend my stuff. Well, that's not the defensive boundary anymore. Now we can defend down to the data. So we're able to get rid of a whole bunch of extra stuff that we really don't need anymore. Makes us more efficient and more secure at the same time, because we can prove that when people are requesting to access a piece of information or an application, right? So it's not just the network, it's the applications all the way down to the data. We can prove that the person who's asking for it is allowed to go see that. We have objective evidence that says this individual can see this thing. And we have records of who did what, when, at what time. And it's all happening in real time. So if we do have to go back and look at what happened, we have all that information now. And in the past, it was harder to get. But more importantly, we've demonstrated to our user communities, some of whom are very, very adamant about the security of their information, even in the Unclass realm, that this works. And that ability, that confidence that we're gaining from the community has really helped us accelerate across the board and move on to some of these more challenging environments like afloat, like you talked about before. But we're also now looking at implementing the same thing at higher classification levels, where a lot of mission work is happening every day. So we're proud of where we've come, but we got a lot more work to do.
Sure, and having that capability to instrument those environments, great insider threat play there as well, which we know is super important for all the folks on this call. Gary, how about at Illumio? We've got several agencies out there, sort of the vanguards that are implementing this capability. Why don't you give us a highlight on one of those?
Yeah, so the agencies that are being the most successful, I think, are the ones that have done a couple of things. Number one is they've recognized, and we've heard this earlier in conversation, that they should be looking at solutions that fit well within other solutions that they've already deployed. Nobody can afford to just completely keep re-architecting, ripping and replacing, right? So they're recognizing the fact that they need to figure out how to make things work holistically together. So we've seen several agencies who have done a really good job of putting those requirements in place with other vendors that say, I don't want vendor lock, I want things that cooperate and graduate, kind of thing. And then the agencies that recognized that ideally you've got a platform, a zero trust architecture that is looking at everything, right? You got to worry about your traditional data centers. We've still got agencies that are dealing with mainframes. And on the other end of the spectrum, they've got cloud native things that they're dealing with, right? So that's a very broad spectrum. And then, don't forget about these things called endpoints with, laptops and those types of things. So you want to be able to manage threats and protections across that entire gamut. And that's very important. And the agencies that are being successful are looking at these things as one big thing that they need to protect, and not siloed in different pieces that they're trying to protect.
Go ahead, please.
No, yeah. And then the last thing is, right, I think that what we're starting to see is, and we're responding to this request, is agencies saying, hey, you can't just tell me I've got these hundreds of thousands or millions of things to protect. And good luck. We'll give you some tools that'll help you protect them. But show me where to start. Give me some insight into where my weaknesses are right from day one, right? I want some immediate return on investment. I don't want you to tell me that it's going to take me 6 months or a year to get a return on investment on a new offering, a new product. But you need to show me real time value and show how you're helping increase my defensive posture from day one, right? Not 6 months later, not a year later. So these tools need to be adaptable, and they need to be user friendly in such a way that users can get return on investment, almost instantly.
Fantastic, and we really appreciate that non-silo approach to things. Really important issue. Let's talk about priorities. Jen, I'm going to start with you. I know you have a number of them over there, but what's the focus in this year? What do you have to get done in 2025?
So I think like a lot of folks in 2025, we're looking more and more at our more sensitive environments moving up. We were really successful, obviously, in our unclass environment. Now trying to replicate that in environments that are a lot more robust and have a lot of legacy infrastructure, just like everyone talked to. I think one of the things that I'm very excited about is the continued maturity around our just-in-time and just-enough administration infrastructure over the next 12 months. And then really, to the points made earlier, moving to that data-centric environment and looking at where we have data that maybe hasn't been integrated into the enterprise, where our robust zero trust architecture is taking off, and how do we ensure that we're getting that so that our users who are out there doing mission and need access to a wider breadth of data than they ever had before have access to that in a secure way, where we can really confirm that the folks who need it and have a mission imperative to have access to certain things have it. So for us, that's the big front, very data focused. We're very AI focused as well as an organization, and looking at how we can leverage those capabilities to capitalize on our data, and looking at how we can continue to mature zero trust, especially when we talk about admins and like moving to what I would just call an even more robust and comprehensive JIT GIA capabilities, just in time and just enough administration for what folks are doing on the systems.
Very laser focused, and we certainly really appreciate that. Chris, how about at Red Hat? Top priority for you in 2025 for Red Hat?
Well, I'm going to thank Jen for broaching the topic, and that is artificial intelligence. I'm sure we haven't gotten sick of hearing about that yet, but it is the new transformation. It's what we're going to see growing more and more as relevant. And so we're looking at how we can integrate artificial intelligence into the underlying infrastructure to provide greater security. So how do you have a system that can operate and pace the threat? It has to have monitoring, alerting, metrics, solutions, and responses in a manner and in a matter that can outpace a human being's ability to trace, monitor, and decide and act. And so we're looking at how can you successfully and safely implement artificial intelligence in your existing infrastructure, and how can you integrate that into operational management of your infrastructure.
And no doubt do it safely. We really do appreciate that. Chris, top priorities for you over there in 2026. You've got a lot, 2025, excuse me. You've got a lot of moving parts going on over there, but I know you're laser focused on a couple of things.
Absolutely. So I would say really a three-pronged approach, right? I mentioned earlier the network piece, finishing the DISA terrain, the DoD net migration. So I would say that that's one line of effort we're going to continue through 25 and moving into 26. The second is DISA is a hosting provider on premise and in the cloud, in public cloud and private cloud. So in our offerings in that space, be it Olympus or Stratus, we need to make sure zero trust effects are integrated into those environments. So applications are able to leverage them from an identity or privileged access management standpoint, right? To get down the path of a service offering that will allow people to quickly get to zero trust for your applications or programs. And then really the third thing to think about is something that was mentioned briefly as far as tactical environments, but I think of something called the mission partner environment that we work with coalition partners on access. So we've employed some pilots and prototypes as far as conditional access based on working with our allies and access to data and control of data. The future war and every war in the past has been fought with allies, right? So like our perspective is we need a way to get our allies access to the right data based on their identity, need to know, and sensitivity of the data. So the three-pronged approach is just that, right? It's finishing up the terrain from a DoD net standpoint, a DISA standpoint, making sure our hosting environments, public cloud, private cloud, and on-premise are put together, and then the mission partner environment where we're looking towards on both SIPR and NIPRNet at this point.
Love the focus there. A lot of stuff you're trying to pack in. Hats off
We're a
to
big place.
absolutely. Wow, top priority, number one priority for CrowdStrike.
Thanks, Luke. Yeah, I think it's just really making sure that we're taking these zero trust concepts and driving them forward into environments that look a little bit different than standard enterprise environments. So whether that's, bringing them to legacy infrastructure, like I mentioned before, bringing them to ephemeral environments, bringing them to esoteric environments, and that could be things like IoT or even really trying to defend like AI systems, AI-based systems. And then thinking
A
about
lot of
even
focus
SaaS
area
apps,
there and a
so
lot to
being able
get
to
done
defend
in
those places as well,
2025.
and
So
just
we
making
really
sure that
appreciate all the
the defense
doubling
posture that
down.
you
We're going to
have
take
in
a
those
short
types of
break and we'll
environments
be
is sort of
right back.
integrated with your
You're listening
general
to the Federal
cross-platform
Executive Forum
enterprise
on
defense
Federal
mechanisms and
News
capabilities, and
Network.
then really making sure that you have some of those zero trust concepts integrated in those places as well. So everybody here that's defending networks, none of them are standard, none of them are just a 50 laptops in a room somewhere or something like that. There's all some of these unique challenges, and it's really working with customers to make sure that they have line of sight on those things and they have a reasonable order of operations so that they can take those things and really bring those concepts to all those different environments in a way that makes sense and is threat informed.
Every one of these environments, extremely global environments, and we really do appreciate that. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about zero trust architectures. We're talking specifically about priorities. And we're going to roll up to you, Barry, at Navy. Top priorities for you in 2025 regarding zero trust.
Right now, I have a counter on my desk. That counter counts down to January 1st, 2027.
Nice.
As a military service, we are fully aware that time is a factor and we're running out of it. So our priorities are laser focused on being ready when we need to be ready. So for 25, it's taking what we've learned in the unclass environment and moving it up into the classified environment. We've got a lot of lessons learned in unclasses, a great testing ground for all these technologies, and we have a lot more availability there. But right now, our priority is to take the goodness that we've shown in the unclass world and get it into the mission space. I really appreciate Chris talking about mission partner environment. That's a huge piece of that puzzle. But also, we need to make sure that our maritime operation centers and our warfighting teams, both Fleet and Fleet Marine Force, are empowered with the tools necessary to secure the environments they're going to fight in. We are certain that we are going to lose things if and when we get into a conflict. So part of our zero trust journey is not just about the security aspects of it, but also about the operational resilience. And so using this architecture, not just to ensure we can securely maneuver or secure the data, I should say, is we can also securely maneuver that data and we can move it to where it needs to be in order to have the right effect. So for 25, right, it's setting the conditions to move those lessons learned that we've had in the unclass world up into the classified mission space, both, the Department of the Navy, DoD-wide, and with our mission partners around the world.
Fantastic. And keep fighting the good fight in regards to that. Gary, how about at Illumio? Top priority for Illumio in 2025 is?
So our top priority is how do we get more and more ROI to our customers, right? How do we help them help themselves? We just had an exciting announcement at RSA where we're really leaning into this concept of helping our customers understand their environment, but more importantly, what threats exist inside their environment that they may not be aware of, and helping identify those potential threats almost from day one. So our CEO likes to talk about helping find the multiple needles and multiple haystacks across your entire farm. So really being able to elevate what we perceive to be potential threats or potential risks across your enterprise, and that includes your data center, your cloud, your endpoints, and elevating those things to a point where a user from day one can walk in and go, I need to go take a look at something. I wasn't aware that this was existing. So really trying to help our users get laser focused on where they should focus their limited resources for the biggest bang for their buck in trying to enhance the security of their entire enterprise.
Sounds like a great idea, and I'm sure they really do appreciate it. Chris at DISA, we want to roll over and talk about top lesson learned. You all are sort of at the forefront of these various activities. There's a lot of folks that listen to this show. They would love to gain some wisdom about lessons learned.
I think integration and interoperability. I know I'm kind of cheating and putting 2 for 1, but I'll say integration, interoperability. What I would say is that there's an illusion with some people who are not touching this, every day or not as close to the subject matter. There's an easy button for zero trust or zero trust architecture, and there's just not. There's not one I've found. Trust me, we would use it at this if there was one. So you need to work with our partners, that a lot of them on this call, to integrate these capabilities together to get zero trust outcomes in effect. So if there's one lesson learned, is that there's an integration component to this, and that these capabilities and technologies need to be interoperable so that they can be integrated, right? So that's where we need help from our mission partners on this call and not on this call, to walk down the path of how can we integrate your capabilities, and are they interoperable? And that's the largest lesson learned that I have.
Great call out there as far as the interoperability. Nobody's interested in a vendor lock, that's for sure, and it needs to be as easy as possible. Jen, lesson learned there at the agency rolling this capability out.
Yeah, I'll go with 2 things. One I think is pretty straightforward. I mentioned earlier, it's nice to make it somebody's job. I'm sure I don't know how Chris actually feels about it being his job. It's a very hard, big job, but it spans your entire enterprise, and it's nice to have someone who's on point, shepherding the efforts forward, because they really will be happening all across the entire organization. So, practical advice: have someone running point on it. Have somebody ensuring that the budget's prioritized in the budget cycle, having somebody ensuring that the right units who need to make the movements on a technical side are empowered and the work's prioritized. I think that was really critical for us in our journey. And then on probably like a much harder thing to do is just understand that it won't be static. I think we mentioned that earlier as well. A lot of times, and probably historically in government, architectures were something that may have been static for a length of time. And really, with the evolution and the speed that technology is moving and changing, I think it's just a realization that this will be an effort that continues to evolve. There'll be new technologies introduced, new best practices, new things from our vendor partners that we can integrate. So I just think that at a more broad level, understanding that this won't be something that's probably ever wrapped up with a pretty bow. We're going to keep building on it.
Sure, there's a lot of architecture that's ended up being shelfware out there, not zero trust for sure. And good catch and call out on the somebody's got to wake up every day and focus their attention on this. So appreciate that. Barry,
So
top lesson learned for the Navy.
yeah, thanks. Sorry about that. The biggest thing for us is this is less a technology thing and more of a culture thing. This is about how you work. The tools are critically important, but from our perspective, the largest area of challenge and the area where we've made the most progress is explaining and getting people to buy in on this new way of looking at how we do business. It's operationally driven, and the operators are saying, no, this is how we're going to go do it. And it's not the traditional security perspective of, well, everything is no first and all that. This is now empowering people to do things as opposed to stopping them from doing things. And so that's been a big success for us in terms of convincing or explaining to people what we're trying to get done. But in the end of the day, this is about a full change in how we do our business, both how we secure things, but also how we operate things. And that's that right there. If anybody's going into this and thinking that it's a technology solution first, they're going to have a hard time, because it's about how you change your business, change your operations to meet the zero trust principles that not only makes you more secure and makes the technology work, but it also lets you accomplish your mission better, faster, and more secure.
Love the idea of the enabling and unlocking versus the blocking. All right, we're going to have to wrap it up. We always like to end with this question about a couple of 3 years from now, right? So we're going to fast forward, Chris. We're going to start with you at Red Hat. Coming out of the Petri dish, demand signal going forward, what are we expecting to be focusing our attention on regarding zero trust at Red Hat?
I think we're going to be focusing on the changing nature of infrastructure. So I've already talked about how things are needing to be provisioned, used, and deprovisioned faster. And one of the things that Barry just mentioned was how really culture eats strategy for lunch. And that is what we're going to have to indoctrinate and change to be able to move forward and achieve these goals. And we can see this with initiatives like moving away from CCRI to CORA. And so that is just another way of changing the way that we look at.
But for those that might not know what those two acronyms mean.
Yeah. So CCRI is Command Cyber Readiness Inspections, which are periodic inspections. And then CORA is Cyber Operational Readiness Assessment, which is a continuous operation paradigm where you are, instead of once a year doing an inspection of your infrastructure, you're continuously monitoring it. And so this is going to also impact the way that we are able to respond and be ready in the future when we look at the fact that things are going to be more dynamic because we aren't going to be in a static environment.
The days of one and done are gone, and we really do appreciate that. Rob at CrowdStrike, what's the focus going to be on 2 to 3 years from now?
Thanks, Luke. Focus at CrowdStrike is always keeping an eye on the threat actors and trying to really deeply understand how their TTPs are changing and how their approaches are changing. It's going to be really interesting as we all in the defensive community continue to experiment with and adopt AI everywhere in the enterprise, including in the security space, to also see how threat actors, which we already see leveraging AI, continue to do that, and to try and ensure that our defensive concepts, including zero trust, are able to defeat those threats. That'll be where we're focused.
Really do appreciate that and look forward to it. Gary, how about at Illumio? You top line some things that you announced at RSA. 2 to 3 years from now, what are you going to be announcing at RSA?
I think we'll be announcing more efforts in helping agencies and companies deal with what happens next, right? What happens after the breach? I think that, I hate to say it, right, but I think that the tie always goes to the attacker. I think the attackers always have a slight advantage. I think the defenders are always back on their heels a little bit, right? So the question needs to be, what have agencies done to protect the most critical things, the most critical data, the ability to continue operations after that breach occurs, right? How do they prevent it from becoming a disaster? How do you turn that breach into a nothing burger, right? And we're going to continue to evolve and innovate so that we can address those attacks faster and faster, shrink that blast radius smaller and smaller, so to the point where agencies can rapidly stand in front of their supervisors or Congress or whoever it may be and say, yes, we were compromised, but there was really zero impact. We were able to address it so quickly, so rapidly, that nothing was taken down, nothing was stolen, nothing was exfiltrated. And I really think that agencies are going to be able to start to see those capabilities as critical, a critical part of their zero trust journey.
Really do appreciate that, and we certainly all look forward to it. Barry, I think about the Navy, right, and things like AI with a hockey stick and all these other things, but I also think about these platforms that are being developed at, Mach, speed, pace in regards to like autonomous drones, etc. 2 to 3 years from now, what's the focus going to be on as far as the zero trust implementation, trying to wrestle all this stuff to the ground?
Well, I'll tell you, and as mentioned by all of the my esteemed panel partners here. This is all about speed. Whatever we think things are going to look like in 2 to 3 years, it's not going to be that. My commanding officer on my first submarine used to say, if you don't like your schedule, wait 5 minutes, it'll change. And this is going to change constantly, right? So we need to assume that up front. We should expect this space to go faster and faster because human machine teaming at scale is going to generate massive change, right? We can't even predict where this is going to go in 12 months, much less in 2 years. So the key for us is to assume that up front, set ourselves up to be ready for that. Get past our sort of compliance posture, kind of like Jen was talking about. This isn't about a static, like this is how we do it. We have to design it so we can evolve with that change and move to continuous assessment, continuous control. I really don't like the term continuous monitoring because monitoring is passive, right? It's about monitoring and control. You have to be able to actively adjust your environment on the fly based on the conditions that you see. And so we're driving in that direction. We want to be prepared for that. Our technology investments are going to help us get to that point. And we want to try to stay ahead of that change as best we can.
Yeah, and I would imagine that a lot of this is about using things like AI, et cetera, but a lot of automation in these environments, right? So this continuous activity that you're talking about and describing is being done in an automated fashion. So we really do appreciate that as well. Chris, how about over at DISA, 2 to 3 years from now, you've got a massive footprint out there that you all are rolling out. It sounds like you're on an absolute march to get these things done. Where are you going to be in 3 years from now?
So the one thing that we haven't covered at any length is operational technology from my perspective. So as you go 1 to 3 years,
Good catch.
technologists that are paying attention to AI are hearing groups talk through power, electricity, nuclear, cooling, how you support the compute that's necessary, how you support the infrastructure that's necessary for not only AI, but the rest of the United States and the world. And then from a zero trust perspective, how do we secure those critical environments? Servers don't run without cooling and power, right? Whether it's virtual or physical. So we need to think about how we secure these environments, these computing centers or these cloud hosting centers. And as we build in compute and other companies come into it with high speed compute, that's all great, but it doesn't work if you don't have those environments secure. So I think the focus for the next 1 to 3 years, as we expand beyond what I would call typical IT, goes into operational technology. And then Barry mentioned earlier the discussion around warfighting machines, whether it's ships or Coast Guard cutters or F-35s, right? Like that to me is the next big problem to solve. And it's a heck of a lot harder of a problem in most cases as it pertains to those tactical pieces of equipment and then operational technology. So that will be the focus over the next 1 to 3 for us.
And going at Mach speed, I might add. So appreciate that as well. Jen, so fast forward 2 to 3 years from now, I'm a freshly minted officer coming out of I guess it's called the farm there. You give me some fancy devices, told me to use MFA. What's the world going to look like? Drop me into some, crazy country. What's it going to look like 2 to 3 years from now? What are you all going to be focusing your attention on?
Man, it's so hard. I feel like 3 to 5 years ago, we would have been pretty confident in our answer. But I don't think 3 to 5 years ago, we ever thought that China would be putting out DeepSeek. I don't think we thought that AI would have taken off as quickly as it did. So it's really tough. I think the couple of things that you're going to see from us over the next couple of years is 100% a commitment to understanding in real time the status of our the assets in our environment, our technical ecosystem, moving to the points earlier. Compliance isn't going to cut it anymore. We need to know what's happening in real time and even in advance of something happening. So I think we're going to see a shift there continue so that we can stay ahead of the technology landscape that's just going to evolve faster than I think we can even imagine. And I think secondly, we're going to see a continued partnership with industry partners. I think forums like this are fantastic. We really do rely a lot on our partnerships with industry when we look at the efforts that we lead for the intelligence community around cloud and other things. I think that We are going to continue to promote the human machine teaming and the business process analysis that it's going to take for us to really take advantage of these capabilities, both in the mission space and in the technology space. So really, with a future that's difficult to predict as far as where technology may be able to go, since it is moving so rapidly, I think that's just our commitment, is to become a more agile organization that is looking at things in real time and is truly invested in taking advantage of the best of breed that commercial has to offer.
Nobody does this alone, and we really appreciate all of you for everything that you do, and just want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for this program. I'd like to thank all the sponsors for supporting us on this show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make our program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank the listening audience out there that tune in every month. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum, part of the Federal News Network.